Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, recommended by LinkedIn Sales as one of 15 innovating influencers to follow. In this episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, I speak to a recent co-author about the inspiration behind the book, Listen to Sell. Really inspirational story that he tells of his personal life that you're going to have to listen to the whole podcast to the end to find out what that is. But we also talked about the dynamic between mindset and skill set, and also coaching and coachability. So there's a lot in here you're going to absolutely love. My next guest has built, trained, and coached sales teams and sales leaders for nearly 30 years. An executive partner with Integrity Solutions since 1999, he is co-author of the new book, Listen to Sell: How Your Mindset, Skill Set, and Human Connections Unlock Sales Performance. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Derek Roberts.
Janice, great to be with you. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm tremendously excited to be with you. It's a great time. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, let's start off with the book. I think it's hit number 1. It's launched yesterday, did you say?
Yeah, in the US, it went live February 6th. Very excited about that. We showed up as number 1 new release on Amazon, so lots of traffic. Just a delight for us to be able to get it out to the world finally. You know how it is putting a book together and launching it. It's an incredible effort. So
yeah. So the book is, and you'll see in the background there is Listen to Sell: How Your Mindset, Skill Set, and Human Connections Unlock Sales Performance. So what was the inspiration behind this then?
Well, thanks for asking, Janice. For us, we know that the landscape is changing, right? And sales is always changing, right? Through all history, there's all kinds of new opportunities, new challenges, new technologies, and there's a lot of momentum and movement, especially right now around digital and commoditization and things like that. And we believe that somebody needed to speak to the salesperson. We really believe in salespeople, right? And so this was kind of our double down on the human side of selling, and to speak not just to the producer, but to the coach as well, and say, look, you're relevant. In fact, you may be more relevant now than ever before because of all the information that's out there, because of all the technologies. That connection that you have with people makes a difference. But it goes beyond that, because it's not just, hey, we're in your corner, but it's how do you do it effectively, and how do you do it in a way that enables you to be successful and successful with your clients. So we deal a lot with the mindset around selling, and not just the skill set. We do both, but we think a lot of it has to do with the human being. And so this is our chance to sort of put that together and offer it to the world in this way.
Well, I think it's interesting because there's 3 critical and distinct conversations you've said in your book. One is with the customer, which we all know about and we focus on. One is between there,
Yes.
with ourselves, which can actually be the one that ruins everything.
That's
and then
right.
This is your interesting perspective, the one with your coach, which is quite a new angle. So why was it really important to put that in?
Yeah, so you're right. We talk about, what are you listening to? The name of the book is Listen to Sell. Are you listening? What are the voices happening here? What are the voices? What's the conversation happening to your customer? But so often, salespeople are almost like an island out there. They're doing the work. They're often in solo environments. They might have a sales manager that comes in and talks to them a little bit, or looks at their numbers. But we believe that, there's a real significant role for the sales coach, right? Somebody that can look at your swing and say, hey, adjust a little bit here, but you need to be open to that. And the question is, are you listening to those voices? Are you actively seeking that kind of input? Because that really requires a level of emotional intelligence. You can get information all day long, but does it process? And if you're not willing to listen to that, then it's really not of any, that information is not of any value, and you're not going to change because you're not open to it. So I think the coaching piece for us was a really significant part of adding this into the book. And in fact, when we wrote the book, we devoted a whole third of the book specifically to that coaching role, right? Listening to your coach. And so it's useful for coaches, but it's also useful to the reader to go, hey, here's a coaching conversation in the book. Maybe it applies to me. And in fact, we broke it down. Every chapter has these little mini coaching corners. So every concept gets coached in real time. And that's what we wanted to make it really useful to folks.
And I think it's really interesting because often sales managers don't know how to coach. They coach the deal, but not the person. But actually, it's the person that creates the deal, because we haven't, many managers haven't had any training around this. They've had training on the numbers, but not on the people. This is not really their forte. So I think this is a really valuable book actually to help the sales manager and to the kind of coaching they really need to be doing to be effective.
Yeah. Janice, we actually put, I think there are over 200 coaching questions peppered all through the book. And so it's not like they have to come up with it on their own. It's just right there and accessible. Pick the ones that are relevant to your team and then dive into those. Because I think you're right. It's hard for folks to come up with that sometimes on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another aspect. I work with a database that's been going for over 30 years, collecting data on sales, but collecting sales-specific data. So the assessments have been of sales leaders, sales managers, down to customer service agents that are in sales as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the aspects that's come out is that there are quite a few people that are not coachable. Coachability is so critical in sales. And you mentioned, coaching, but what happens if you're with someone that isn't really coachable? They're not open to be coached. What happens then?
Well, not everyone is suited to be in the sales role. I mean, I think there's some truth to that, right? Because it's a tough space to be, and you have to have the right attitudes, and you have to be, open to growth and change. If you're not coachable, as my dad has a saying, everyone deserves to be successful. Some deserve to be successful somewhere else. So that may be true, but I think, figuring out, how do people receive that? Part of it is, the distinction between coachable, or are we coaching them in the right way? Each of us communicates in a different way. We actually spend a good bit of time in the book talking about individual behavior styles, right? How do you hear information? How do you process information? And so being able to read and understand, how am I interacting with this person, and am I doing it in the most effective way? In a sales environment, the question is, am I selling to someone the way they want to be sold? Similarly, in coaching, am I coaching someone in the way that's most effective to coach them? And that requires a little bit of work on a leader's, perspective to figure out, what do I know about my people, and how can I be the most effective with them? And there are, in fact, probably some people that are just closed off to coaching. But that's what I would address first is, do I coach the person in the right way? And if then they're not open to it, then maybe they do belong in a different kind of role.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this database, it's gone through over 2.5 million sales people in roles. And so it actually has told us that a good 77% of salespeople should not be in sales. You need to think about, there's a lot of people that have fallen into sales that didn't do anything else, and they're in sales and they're stuck with it, and they get used to the money, and they're, hanging on for dear life. But what is required to be good in sales has continued to evolve. But yet the quota attainment is still around 50%. only
Mm,
50% of
right.
people actually achieve quota. And that's been the case for the last 30 years. So that's been remained quite flat. And that's why, the percentage of people in sales that shouldn't be in sales is relatively high.
It is
Yeah.
relatively high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's unfortunate for companies because it's costly to them, right? I mean,
Very.
how much energy and resource gets applied to, not having the right fit? And if you could move the needle even just a little bit, both in productivity and in savings, how does that impact a company's bottom line?
Yeah. Enormously.
So, yeah.
So you co-authored the book with Mike Easterday. So tell me about that relationship in writing a book. It's difficult enough writing a book, but having a co-writer as well. Is it a help? It's a hindrance? How do you come together? How does that work?
I would call it a fabulous relationship. Mike, I have the utmost respect for. He is a brilliant man and quite successful, and we've had a working relationship for 20 plus years with the Integrity Solutions business. We're co-owners in that business, and have just. I think the greatest thing about it is we have a very sort of shared ethic. We very much value people and what we can do, not just to make them successful, but to make their customers successful. I mean, we Mike is I think what's interesting is as we went through the editing process and writing process, we would almost complete each other's thoughts, and I think that's not always true for authors. A lot of times you sort of compete, but it's a very shared, and part of that is because we're drawing on 50 years of experience with a lot of these concepts through our customers and the Integrity Solutions history. We have so many customers across the globe. We've aggregated that, and so we're operating out of some shared experiences, and that's made it a lot easier for us to work together.
So what would you say in terms of the mindset versus skill set? What is the percentage that makes a really good salesperson? Is it 50-50, or is one thing outweighing the other in today's environment?
Janice, that's not a fair question.
I
That's
know.
like asking you to choose between two children, right? You
You
can't
got to
favor one or the other.
choose.
They are both important. And whether it's 50-50 or whatnot, you certainly have to have the skill set of selling. There is a professional discipline to selling. There's a communication process. There is a way to engage. There is all of the energy and effort that is required to prepare, to follow up, right? That is the discipline and process of selling, skill set. If you don't have that, you're still going to struggle. You will never be as successful as you could be, both for yourself, but also for your customers. You're cheating your customers if you're not doing the work of selling. And so we value that. But there is an equal part over here that happens inside the salesperson. We say selling happens between the ears before it happens between people, right? What goes on in your head absolutely influences your productivity. And we break it down in a couple areas. What do you believe selling, how do you, the value of selling, or what's your view of selling? Do I believe that it is and we use the language noble profession? Do you believe it's a noble profession? And that has a huge impact on whether or not you lean into it or whether you just show up and do the job, right? What's your own value set? What do you think your abilities are and capabilities are? Do you believe in the products and services you represent? Do you think that you're a significant part of the equation? Or do you do the activities? So what happens internally drives an enormous amount of effectiveness. And so is it more, is it less? I think they both are necessary. And if you're lacking in either one, you've got work to do. And I think probably all of us have work to do, because at any given time, my skill set may fall behind because the landscape changes around me. Technology changes. I have to keep up. I may have, as all of us in sales do, right, a couple of stumbles, right? We get some rejections. Does my mindset, does my emotional intelligence allow me to recalibrate and go, you know what? I still bring something valuable in the marketplace, and I need to get out there and do that. So it is a dynamic balance between those two.
So some people might say that skill set is something you can teach, you can learn it, but actually there's many aspects of mindset that are intrinsic, that one, you can't measure for it in terms of like the normal interview process, and you can't teach them it as well. So there may be an argument that actually that's not first or second, or but actually you've got to have certain aspects in place to actually give you the ability to take on what you learn in order to be a great salesperson. But if you don't have those intrinsic essential areas or competencies already in place, doesn't matter how many skills you learn, you're still not going to be a top salesperson. So what's your thoughts?
So and I know there's some disagreement in the world about this, but I'm a believer sort of in the ability to adapt. And you're familiar with Dr. Travis Bradberry and his work on emotional intelligence. He's recently released a book called Emotional Intelligence Habits. The ability to shape the way that we respond and adapt to things, our beliefs, our abilities to stretch and understand. Are those things locked? The idea that we have some kind of elasticity in our ability to interpret the world and to respond to the world. So I'm probably more a believer in that those things can be shaped, but I also believe that some of those things are what is my motivation attached to? Can I connect some of those driving factors that influence sort of the emotional side or that internal side? Can I connect those in a way that then allows me to use my skill set effectively? And so would I just categorically disqualify some people based? I'm not sure that I would go that far at this stage. I think there's a room for the coaching component there.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm at least willing to try. How about that?
Oh, you're very generous, Derek. You're probably more so than me, I'm afraid.
Well, I think about my own growth along the journey, right? Certainly there's some intrinsic qualities that I know that if I go and look all the way back to childhood, I'm entrepreneurial in nature. I found things that I was a problem solver, right? I navigate around. Those are qualities I think that serve me well in sales. But there are other things that I've added to that and discovered about myself as I've been in sales. And so, can that grow and develop? I think it can. But you and I could have a much longer discussion about that, and I would relish more of your insight. Maybe you can sway me.
Well, this is not about me. This is all about you. No, I think it'll be interesting to have a conversation around this. But I do want to kind of move on to another subject in terms of working with sales organizations and developing buyer and customer centricity. What would you say are the kind of risk factors or elements that we need to take on board?
I think in any situation, looking at the customer centricity, do organizations really understand their customers and needs and markets that they're serving? We get enamored with the things that we know. We get enamored with the things that we create. And there are often, both in general organizationally, but certainly as salespeople, we run the risk of locking in on the things that we know and we understand and we feel are great, and we can miss how we translate those effectively to our customers. I think the other piece of that is that so often in the selling world, we sell to the sales event. Right? We will concentrate on that person is our customer. That buyer is our customer. And we miss what goes on beyond that. We do a lot of B2B selling, business selling. And I challenge our customers all the time, not just to look to their customer, to that transaction, but actually look through their customer. The idea is, how can I be relevant to my customer so they can be relevant to their customer? And if you're not relevant in that chain of value, if you don't understand what your presence in that relationship does that enables them to provide value to their customer, you're missing it. You're short-sighted in the equation. And so you have to know a second tier down often, where is this in the value chain for their customer, and how can I be particularly relevant to that? And that changes the discussion, that changes the nature of the engagement. I think it makes salespeople and organizations much smarter and much more valuable.
I think that's a great point, in that as salespeople, what we need to be focused on is not just the customer, but the customer's customer, because a lot of things that changes the customer environment starts with the customer. So if we can kind of leapfrog and tap into what is driving that behavior, then we can actually feed that back to our customers, or even use that as their return on investment. If you do this, then this is how we can demonstrate it's going to help you to sell more of your product to your customer. So yeah, I think it's a really good point, and never losing sight of not the customer, but the customer's customer, and what's driving their behaviors, and using that as part of your armory as well, not just focusing on the immediate sale. Yeah. Yeah, it's all about kind of building that value chain and the relationship, and in the value chain, and where the real value is, and it's the end customer, the user, isn't it?
It is. And it can be for anything that we sell, right? It's not just something that directly passes through to their customer, but how do you fit their entire value equation? Because that is what your customer is thinking about.
Yeah.
And they exist because they serve their customers. And if we can't figure out where we belong in that, we may not exist in that relationship for very long.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what one tried and tested strategy would you offer listeners on how to scale their sales?
I would say two things, Janice. One is practice discipline. I think I've been in sales for 30 plus years of my own life, and gosh, almost more than that now. And the thing that I think tremendously impacts that is continuing to do the fundamentals, the basics, right? Do your pre-call plan, take time, give yourself the ability to be on point and present with your customer. Ron Willingham, who is the genesis of much of these concepts for integrity solutions that we use, Ron shared with me once, he said, Derek, be careful you don't fall into the trap that it works so well you quit doing it. And it kind of catches you off guard. And you go, okay, when I was hungry, young and hungry, what did I do? Well, why are those not the things that I do as I become more competent? I have to stay disciplined, focused. So I think that's one piece of it. I think the other piece of it is to give yourself the opportunity to reflect on what we said, the mental side, right? The mindset of selling. I on a weekly basis have what we call our congruence model, these 5 areas that influence what I believe about myself and the role. What do I view selling as? What do I think my values are? And I assess myself on a weekly basis, kind of grade myself. How did I do? What did my sales activity reflect? And how do I recenter myself to make sure that I show up in the best possible mindset with energy and focus for my customer, doing the right thing, and then I apply complementary discipline to it. I think those are the 2 things that if you will do those, it will have tremendous impact. It's not particularly complicated, but it's, common sense is not always common practice. Yeah. And we can fall into those traps real easily.
Yeah. It's often the simplest things that have the biggest impact, and they're so simple we forget to do them, or we don't do them consistently. And that's, as you say, focus on the foundation. So love that, Derek. Okay, so who is your hero or shero, Derek?
Well, that's an easy one for me, Janice. Is probably the most amazing person I know. And she is, without a doubt, my hero. We have 10 children, and those 10 children, some of them are adopted. 6 of them are actually adopted. And those kids, a lot of our kids have medical special needs. My wife is amazing. She is the one that keeps us rolling, keeps us going. When you talk about courage, she's the one that I look to for inspiration. So
amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think I'm going to interview her next time. There's a lot we can learn from your wife, how she kind of keeps it rolling, keeps everyone together and everything like that, and still remain positive. Fantastic. And also, you know, your children as well, you know, with various medical issues, and that they keep going and smiling. So that's certainly inspiration. Derek seems to have frozen, so I'm just going to close out by saying thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.